Good afternoon. Je suis très heureux de me joindre à vous aujourd'hui depuis le territoire traditionnel non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, qu'on reconnaît comme gardien passé, présent et futur de cette terre. It is so great to be back with you all in person. I want to thank the elders, National Chief Archibald, regional chiefs, and all the chiefs in Assembly for having me and members of our government here at your meeting. I appreciated our conversations last week as well, when I got the chance to sit down with a number of you to hear about the priorities for your regions. There really is no replacement for being together, for the connections we share when we're person to person. J'espère que les réunions et les discussions que vous avez eues au cours des derniers jours ont été productives. Je sais que plusieurs autres ministres vous ont parlé du travail que notre gouvernement fait pour les Premières Nations de l'île de la Tortue. On est tous ici aujourd'hui pour répondre aux besoins des gens. On est ici pour bâtir le meilleur avenir possible pour les Premières Nations du Canada, pour les 7 prochaines générations. We're doing a lot of good work together and tackling big challenges. As you know, work at this size and scale takes time, especially if we're going to get it right. The pervasive and systemic issues generated by our colonial past cannot be overturned overnight. The full benefits will be felt over years to come, but only if we don't let up on our work. We need to continue to push together through this with even more urgency. That's why, since day one, it has been a fundamental priority of our government to work with you, to be there and continue to make investments that address historical wrongs and create opportunities and support self-determination. This is putting reconciliation in action. And for our government to do this properly, we need your continued support, wisdom, and direction. For example, there's work ahead to make sure First Nations communities are as safe and healthy as can be. I had the honor of visiting James Smith Cree Nation last week to sit down with the grieving families and affected community members. There, we talked about the need for better, culturally grounded mental health and addiction support for those who need it when they need it. And importantly, we talked about keeping Indigenous communities safe and moving past colonial structures towards community-based safety and wellness projects. I'm holding those conversations close as we advance this crucial work together. We also know your communities need further housing investments. Everyone in Canada deserves a safe and healthy place to raise and support their family. So, in our spring budget, we announced major investments to support housing on reserve. This will help build and renovate thousands of homes. We're working with Indigenous partners on launching an urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing strategy, and we're continuing our work with First Nations to co-develop and bring forward new water legislation that serves your needs. A safe, clean, and healthy environment is important to everyone in Canada. Many of your communities have shared teachings with me about your cultural and spiritual connections with nature. Vous faisiez de la pêche dans les océans bien avant l'arrivée des navires européens. Vous avez appris à chasser grâce aux connaissances traditionnelles que vos aînés transmettent depuis des générations. Et vous connaissez depuis longtemps les aliments et les remèdes que la terre nous procure. Votre respect envers la terre et votre façon de vous en occuper sont essentiels à nos efforts collectifs pour protéger l'environnement et lutter contre les changements climatiques et pour freiner et inverser la perte de la biodiversité. Just yesterday, I announced that our government is investing $800 million for 4 major Indigenous-led conservation areas that will conserve almost 1 million square kilometers of nature. This not only protects important plants, animals, and marine life, but also makes sure that we're preserving nature that absorbs and stores carbon. We cannot protect or manage these conserved areas without the full participation of First Nations. This investment is a major step forward in protecting nature across the country and will drive progress towards Canada's ambitious goals of conserving 25% of land and waters by 2025 and 30% of each by 2030. We're supporting the vision and stewardship of the Indigenous communities in this work as we move forward to build a better future and create jobs. We're also working together on some of the tougher, more difficult areas of reconciliation, areas where we know the healing journey for all of us is still long. The news out of Winnipeg last week has been heartbreaking. 4 Indigenous women missing and likely murdered. These chilling and recurring acts of violence against Indigenous women cannot continue. Our government remains committed to transformational change. We're continuing to work with partners to implement the federal pathway, which is our contribution to the National Action Plan to address the ongoing tragedy of MMIWG. On est conscient du travail difficile qu'il reste à faire alors que vous continuez à faire la lumière sur la douloureuse vérité sur ce qui est arrivé à vos enfants dans les pensionnats. Ce printemps, on a nommé une interlocutrice spéciale, Kimberly Murray, pour nous aider à maîtriser les complexités juridiques et juridictionnelles de ce travail. Et on va continuer de s'assurer que vous avez les ressources nécessaires pour repérer les lieux de sépulture et les commémorer. I want to take a moment also to acknowledge your bravery in hosting the papal apology visit this summer as part of Call to Action 58. Like many of you, I attended the event in Masquachish. I saw firsthand how important the moment was for many, including non-Indigenous Canadians, for the recognition and acceptance of the painful truth of what happened to your children, families, and communities as a direct result of residential schools and ongoing colonial policies. It bears recognizing that the Pope's apology would never have happened without the courage, grace, and advocacy of survivors. Our government remains committed to fully implementing all the TRC recommendations that are federal responsibilities. We're working to right past wrongs and injustices, including wrongful surrenders of land. In June, I went to the Siksika Nation, where after 6 decades of advocacy and fighting, our government finally announced a co-developed settlement agreement that will provide significant financial compensation. The settlement will go towards the nation's vision of a strong community, economic development, job creation, and more. On va de l'avant avec la mise en œuvre de la loi sur la Déclaration des Nations Unies sur les droits des peuples autochtones. Cette loi est entrée en vigueur en juin de l'année dernière. On va continuer de travailler avec vous pour s'assurer que la déclaration favorise la réconciliation, la guérison et une coopération durable entre le gouvernement fédéral et les peuples des Premières Nations et tous les peuples autochtones partout au Canada. On augmente aussi nos investissements et on collabore avec des partenaires à tous les niveaux. On veut connaître vos opinions sur comment on peut répondre aux besoins des peuples des Premières Nations. Peu importe les défis à relever, c'est important de les relever ensemble. I want to underline how important it is that we continue to find effective and meaningful ways of working together. You've heard me say it before. No relationship is more important to our government than the relationship with Indigenous peoples. And we need to make sure we're using the right tools to manage and support this relationship. 6 years ago, our government announced the creation of the Permanent Bilateral Mechanism. This doesn't in any way replace the nation-to-nation treaty relationships, but it does offer a forum in which we can discuss shared priorities, develop policies, and monitor our progress. In the past, we've used it for meaningful progress, including working with First Nations on co-developing the Indigenous Languages Act, which received royal assent in 2019. This is historic legislation that will preserve and strengthen Indigenous languages for generations to come. Just 2 weeks ago, in fact, the MP for the Northwest Territories, Michael MacLeod, announced a new investment to support Indigenous languages in the North. This work was possible in part because of the permanent bilateral mechanism. So let's revitalize this tool. Let's use it to make sure we're identifying national, regional, and grassroots priorities, and to make sure we're delivering on all levels. Élaborons ensemble un cadre de travail conjoint qui va nous permettre de répondre à vos besoins dans tous les domaines que j'ai mentionnés et plus encore, comme le développement financier et économique. Le mécanisme bilatéral permanent pourrait nous aider à faire ce travail. On peut aussi utiliser ce mécanisme pour mesurer les impacts de nos investissements sur le terrain et pour s'assurer de bien faire les choses. Chaque communauté a des besoins différents et on veut les connaître. Everyone here can be part and should be part of thinking about how we can better use this permanent bilateral mechanism. And please continue to engage with cabinet ministers as a part of this work. We can all be your partners in tackling issues specific to your regions. Now, you've heard me use the words work and together a lot over these past few minutes, because that's what this is, a working relationship, because there is lots of work to do. We want to get it done as efficiently as possible because we know how pressing the needs are in your communities. So let's not let anything get in our way. When we face setbacks, we'll find new solutions. First Nations people today and the next generations are depending on us to get and to make this right. Let's keep building a solid foundation built on respect in our working relationship. Of course, our government recognizes that this takes time, effort, and resources, and we'll be there with you every step of the way. But we cannot do it alone. This is hard work, but it's good work. Work that reinforces the strength and resilience of First Nations communities, work that helps us heal, work that builds a better future, work done in partnership that moves us all forward on the path of reconciliation. Miigwech, Nanaskamutanao, Masicho, Gela Kasla. Merci. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Miigwech, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Alors, comme je vous l'ai annoncé un peu plus tôt, nous allons avoir une période de questions. Nous allons avoir trois orateurs à la fois, donc toujours le même ordre, 1, 2, 3. So, we'll have 3 speakers at a time, so we'll start with the microphone number 1, then microphone number 2, and then the third person behind you. So, microphone number 1, you have up to 3 minutes, and I will please ask you kindly to clearly state your name and First Nations. Thank you. Microphone number 1, please.
Thank you so much. Greetings from the traditional Treaty 6 territory. I'm the proxy chief on behalf of the Onion Lake Cree Nation. And we'd like to send also our greetings and our thanks to this traditional territory of the Algonquins and the Anishinaabe, and thank you for having us here. I heard this morning, Honourable Justin Trudeau, you talk about work, togetherness, reconciliation. I find it interesting on a morning where we wake up to Bill 1, coming out of Alberta. When last night I listened to it for 5.5 hours straight, and the experts said it's unconstitutional. It's an attack on our treaty and our inherent rights. It's something that will tear at the fabric of what you call the state of Canada and what we call Turtle Island. It's hurtful to hear that our treaty partners, as it were, are not standing behind us and giving those strong messages to say, there's a problem here. You're talking about working, you're talking about togetherness. But signals like Bill 1 and Bill 88 coming out of Saskatchewan send the wrong signals. They tell us that this pathway that we're going down is not a pathway that it's together. It then again leaves us out as treaty nations, sovereign treaty nations, trying to shut off our voices, trying to impact our treaties, trying to terminate our rights. So as our treaty partner, we read your messages this morning in the news. It was very, very disappointing. So how are we going to be able to work together? We call on, as Onion Lake Cree Nation, from my territory, all treaty nations and allies to put in writing a letter from rights holders to denounce, retract, and reject these bills, Bill 1 and Bill 88, that tear at the fabric of our lands. You said, and I've heard the minister say, we're here to work together. Our treaties were meant that we should flourish and that we should be able to come together. But instead, that puts us even lower on the bottom of the scale. So how is this a good signal, Honorable Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister? How is this a good signal? That's my question to you. Onion Lake calls on all nations and allies to write letters from rights holders and do that work that we've shared by email.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Time is up. Thank you very much. Microphone number 2, please. 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Trudeau. My name is Wendy Jocko, Chief for the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation. I would like to welcome you, your ministers, and the rest of your entourage to Algonquin territory, which has been blessed by the Creator with many gifts. As you may be aware, Pikwakanagan, along with other Algonquins in Ontario, are in the final stages of treaty negotiations. This will be the first modern-day treaty in the province of Ontario. We have been petitioning the Crown since 1772 for lands back. My great-grandfather was Chief Pennesee. He actually signed 19 of those petitions in his lifetime. In 1991, the last petition was submitted and was accepted by the Crown. And previous chiefs have dedicated their lives, in particular, Chief Kirby White Duck, Chief Lisa Maness, Chief Robert White Duck, Chief Greg Saracen, and Chief Clifford Maness. So we are where we are at today. So this modern-day treaty encompasses 9 million acres, ranging from North Bay to Hawkesbury, including in its entirety the city of Ottawa. And Minister Miller actually did previously speak, and we did write a letter to yourself as well as Minister Miller, as you are aware. So we are very pleased to receive the letter on the 25th of November confirming the fact that we will not have to relinquish our reserve at Pikwakanagan to enter the modern-day treaty, in addition to giving up the tax exemption. So that, was a very positive letter, and we thank you very much for that. And since we really have no experience in treaty, I have been listening very intently over the course of the last couple of days to all the very experienced treaty chiefs sitting in the Assembly, in particular Chief Crowchild, who apparently has asked in the past many times if our treaty lands will be made into municipalities, and that is a great fear that she had, and of course that is a great fear that members of Pikwakanagan have had and still have. So we need to be certain prior to signing any modern-day treaty that we will not be subject to changes for tax exemption, turning our lands into municipal ownership. So we need that confirmation, and if you could do that, we would much appreciate it. And my time's up.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you. So we'll go back to microphone number 1 for this last speaker of this block, and then I noticed that there is someone on the Zoom platform, but we'll go to the Zoom platform right after to the second block, since I already announced you, Chief, at microphone number 1. Please, you have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Wajik, Sylvia Gustajan Matadawaban Shinhasan. I'm from Matawabasket First Nation Chief. Kutaji Mitanamasia Gataya Gutaho, Masuis Gog, Napio Gani Ganichik, Naskamunodit Ebiji Amian. Greetings to everybody that is here, men, women, the leaders, everybody, Prime Minister. I'm just going to get straight to it. There are many communities still suffering, such as Atawabaskat, and there's still many communities reeling with third world conditions. And you're calling for a partnership, reconciliation, justice. Well, there's a lot of communities such as Atawabaskat that need that need to be heard. And there's communities like us shouldn't be suffering to meet the basic needs for our people. It's a struggle, and dealing with the bureaucracy and the systems and obstacles just to be heard. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for other communities that are isolated. And I don't think it's fair, because we're supposed to live in Canada, one of the wealthiest in the country, and yet I can't even offer anything to our peoples because we're just very limited. I'm going through the bureaucratic process, but it's frustrating because it doesn't meet our needs, and it's not fast enough. When we say every child matters, within my community there's a lot of children and they all matter. Niskanjaga, for water, the basic life. Why do we have to come to these forums just to meet the basic needs for our people? I know we're at different levels. Some are privileged communities, but it's really, really frustrating when you're working from a remote community and just try to meet your basic needs. And that is all I wanted to say, bring to your attention. I'm frustrated because I come to these farms and I beg the chiefs here, why are we leaving communities behind? Stand up, make noise. It shouldn't happen today. I don't want to come back to the forum and say this over again. Atawabaskat, people are familiar with Atawabaskat. And it's time we reconcile everything. It's frustrating. Mingash. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. So, and I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Prime Minister Trudeau, to you. Thank you.
I want to begin addressing the first question, to thank the Chief for the proxy from Onion Lake for her words. We are extremely concerned about what the Sovereignty Act in Alberta and Bill 88 in Saskatchewan represent in terms of challenges to treaty rights that are fundamental in Canada and need to be respected. But just like the federal government shouldn't be, the relationship between a federal government and a provincial government is not one of a parent to a child. The Constitution brings together provinces and the federal government with distinct areas of jurisdiction and responsibility. And as we've seen duly elected provincial governments can move forward on laws that we as a federal government disagree with. And the remedy for that is through the court system. Now, as we have said a number of times as a federal government, there are proposals and laws, including Bill 21 in Quebec, Bill 1 in Alberta right now, and others that we disagree with. And we will continue to have those conversations. And when it comes to fighting for treaty rights, when it comes to fighting for Section 35 rights, we will always be there. But we're in a situation right now where, to be direct and honest about it, Bill 1, the Sovereignty Act in Alberta, is being moved forward as very much a political tool to try and pick a fight with the federal government. And I'm not interested in fighting with the Alberta government. I know people in Alberta, whether it's First Nations people or non-Indigenous people or anyone in Alberta, needs a government that is investing in them, building homes, creating jobs, fighting climate change, protecting nature, building a strong future, keeping communities safe. There are so many things we need to work on together, and our focus as a government is on being there for Albertans, for folks like people in Onion Lake in Saskatchewan, and people across the prairies and across the country. We're going to continue to be there, and we will stand in support as Albertans, as Saskatchewanians, as Quebecers challenge laws they see as unjust that come against their rights. It is, in a society of laws, a court process that is able to bring citizens to fight for their rights against government overreach. That's how our system works, and we will be there to continue to support. We will continue to work together with you. But we will not engage in the kind of political fight that the government of Alberta is looking for. We will stay focused on delivering for you, delivering for all Albertans, indeed delivering for all people across this country who need governments that work for them. Secondly, Chief Wendy, thank you for your welcome to this beautiful Algonquin territory. The modern treaty process is one that Minister Miller has been, and his predecessor, Carolyn Bennett, have been working very, very hard on in terms of streamlining, in terms of improving, in terms of working out so we can move you at your pace, in your ways, towards resolving long-standing issues. You talk about going back to the 1700s. It is time, it is overdue to work out what the incarnation of those treaties look like and what they should look like in modern times. I mentioned in my speech the agreement we came to with the Siksika Nation. It was $1.3 billion of compensation because of land that was taken away from them 100 years ago. It was something we worked out together through a process, and I hear your concerns and municipalities and tax bases, and those are all things that you are in the driver's seat on. You need to help define what it is that you want as a nation, what it is that you need as communities, and we need to figure out how to do that in a way that is consistent and fair, suited to you, but consistent across the country. And as every different community works at different pace and in different situations toward what is going to work for you, our responsibility is to be there to accompany, to be those partners, and yes, be there with resources, but it's not up to us. It would be a simple replication of the colonial structures for us to say, well, this is how the modern treaty will resolve itself for all of you. And I know for many communities, as you mentioned, it's a new process. There are places across the country where there are modern treaties. There are others that don't have that. And learning from what works for them, what could be adapted for you, is something that we are very much there to do. But true reconciliation can only work through those partnerships. It could probably be a lot faster if I had someone draw up what it should look like and just put it in. But it would be wrong. Because we can't replicate that colonial mindset if we're going to actually create the kind of partnership that we need. So it takes a little longer. And you're right to have all sorts of questions about it, and we'll try and give you the best possible answers on the pros and cons of this model versus that model. But we will and we need to continue to move forward towards the self-government, towards the support that each of you and so many of you want. And on that, Sylvia, I have to say that even as we see some parts and some communities in the country, as you point out, doing very well and have been able to build and transform things in a very positive way over the past few years, there are far too many others that are still struggling. I know there's a new school in Attawapiskat, but I also know that the youth center that I had made a commitment to got suspended during COVID and is now damaged and going to have to be started again. And the story of Attawapiskat is one of heartbreak, and the young people that are dealing with the situations there continue to be a real challenge. And you mentioned Miscandaga as well. Yes, we're getting closer to ending the boil water advisory there. We've put in a new water treatment plant and invested, but there's still work to be done. And we're going to continue doing that, and we're going to try and do it as quickly as possible, but it has to be done in partnership, and that's where we're pledged to continue to work with you to try and turn this around. And I know everyone in this room wants to see Attawapiskat and other regions and areas that are struggling so much do better, none more than me, and we will be there to help you on the path and with the priorities that you need, even though I absolutely agree it's taking too long. That we have to get it right, and that takes years, but we have to do it now because now is when the kids need it. And finding the balance between that, how we can act with urgency but act concertedly together, is the tension that we all feel every single day as we try to move this country forward on the path of reconciliation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, the microphone. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. So if you're comfortable, I propose to go to do the last round, but I will kindly ask you to be very, very brief, and we'll go to the Zoom platform, and we'll have Chief Elizabeth Katakwapit from Fort Albany. We'll then go to microphone number 1, and then final speaker to microphone number 2, and it will close the question session. So the 3 last chiefs, please, if you can please unmute, and if you can please make sure, yes, your camera is on. Thank you very much to you, Chief Katakwapit, and you have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Wajek Mr. Way, Wajek Prime Minister, Okamakan Chief Elizabeth Katakwapit, Dishnakason, Fort Albany First Nation Dushjin. Egomaga. I come from Fort Albany, where St. Anne's School was located, which was referred to as the most notorious residential school. In my homeland, there was much suffering of children that were sexually abused, physically abused. Just yesterday, a survivor told me of his experience being put in an electric chair twice, as well as being forced to eat his own vomit. Most of the most horrific abuses in Canada happened at St. Anne's Residential School. Survivors from northern communities have taken the position that reconciliation cannot be considered unless justice has been achieved for IRS survivors, including St. Anne's Residential School. Prime Minister, please stop fighting us, the First Nations people of Canada. Please release those residential school documents that are being withheld from us. We want to heal. We want justice now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. So I encourage you also to be, she's a good example. I encourage you, please, to be as brief as possible to get a proper response from Prime Minister Trudeau. So microphone number 1, please, to you.
Kwe, Tony Wawari Indigenous, Algonquin nin, Nino Daki Nanwedi Nishnabe, Algonquin Nation, Gajan Kaziot, Miguet Chegi Bijaye Koma, Ugamak, Chogamak, Shamaganashik, Ikwe, Ketek, Ushkini Got. Hello, my name is Tony Wawari. I'm the chief of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake, Indian Act chief. Our customary system was forcibly taken away from us. And that's the issue that I have today. I come here with a strong heart and an open mind, despite the fact that I'm a survivor of colonizers, state settlers that continue to encroach and take away our lands. I ask my brothers and sisters and my ancestors to help me out, as I am going to be delivering a message here and to give a simple reminder of the relationship that we once had. I am Mjiganap Queenie. I am not a Quebecer. I am not a Canadian. I'm not an Indigenous person that we are being categorized as. We have our Onakunigewin, our customary laws that governed us since time immemorial. Truth and reconciliation, what does that mean? You've raped our people, you've raped our land, you stole our identity. You nearly wiped us out with the poison blanket that came across the seas, the poison blanket. We need to remind you, Prime Minister, and I have a language just like you. The British language talks about our wampum belt, and that's our treaty. I don't agree with the modern treaty self-government process. My rights are not for sale. My rights are not for sale, and I bring my drum here. That's the heartbeat of Mother Earth and the heartbeat of our nation. I come here with a good heart and an open mind, and I'm coming to be brief with that. Shamaganashik, Ugamak, Ndatukwedi, Kaikidwan. Chimiwet Ndakit, my rights are not for sale, and it'll never be for sale. Chimiwet, oh!
Chimigwich, thank you very much. Last speaker, microphone number 2, please.
Miigwech Kabajaya, Prime Minister. Ogaman Nemanagojing Goyakasid Shnakaz, Chieftain Sayers. I am from the Crane clan. I'm Ojibwe. I'm from the Great Lakes. And I'm really honored to be able to speak for even a moment, if I could, and just remind you a little bit about some of the history that you're hearing here today. But I guess more succinctly, when we were in Whitehorse in 2013, I don't know if you remember, I had a chat with you there. And at that time, we had this discussion, and we were going to get together. And I wanted to take you up on that invitation to come and meet with you in Ottawa one of these days. Or come to Sault Ste. Marie. I'd love to meet with you in Batchewana First Nation as well. But we do have some unfinished business that I'd really love to have a productive discussion with you in regards to what you inherited as Canada's Prime Minister and the honour of the Crown that came with our relationship that was struck, one of the relationships that was struck in 1850 with the Robinson-Huron Treaty. Just along that same vein, we've had some incredible discussions over the last decade or so in regards to the unresolved issues around the $4 a year or the annuity, our share of the wealth of the lands. And we went through ceremony together with your representatives, and not only yours, but Ontario's, and we went into sweats, and there's cross-cultural awareness, and our ancestors have accompanied us through that process, a really beautiful process to try and find a resolve to the outstanding annuities issue. And we are getting close, and we've been really elated with where we are right now. I wanted to make sure that we can continue on that really beautiful path and find resolve sooner than later. So I just wanted to encourage you to please maybe refresh some of your discussions with some of your representatives and maybe provide them with whatever they need to be productive at these tables. So again, I want to thank you on behalf of my people, and I'm one of the spokespersons for the 21 bands that are part of the Robinson-Huron Treaty and Lake Superior area. So thank you so much, and I appreciate you being here with us today. Chimigwich Kibijaya. And I don't have a problem with my last 40 seconds for this guy, for this Gima Miigwech.
Chief James Marlowe from Tlutsuke, Northwest Territories. Just really as I came all the way from Northwest Territories to ask Mr. Prime Minister for his help in regards to what the government of Northwest Territories has done to our people. They went into a cultural camp and raided the camp. A lifestyle we practiced for thousands of years. We went back to our homeland. We stayed there. The government of Northwest Territories came in and raided the camp looking for evidence of caribou being killed. So that's a huge issue on our people, elders, children, and people from all over the world. There are some people there. It's an international event, so I'm asking you for your help to help us. September. And your father has a relationship with our elders. Marcy Cho.
Thank you very, very much. So the discussion period is now closed. Thank you very much. No, I announced it just a bit earlier. But we have one online also. So, okay. Okay, so microphone number one, can I ask you kindly to be very brief?
I'm going to have to very much shorten my answers then, but I want to hear from you, so please.
Number one, please.
Oh, thank you very much. I didn't want to have to stand here and beg. My name is Chief Annie Bernard Daisley. I'm from Waggamaw First Nation. I'm only here for a few quick statements. You've heard a lot over the last few days, so I carry my ancestors as well, as we all should. My late grandfather, Chief John Bask of Bodladek First Nation, said, "How much land did you bring over on your boats anyways when you sailed over?" I had to give that ode to my grandfather. I also want to say this. In June, I was in Ottawa. Here, I'm from Nova Scotia, and I went to meetings at Cernak and Isk. Sitting around a table with people who make decisions on our lives, on our future, what comes to our communities, none of them sitting around a table knew our stats or the facts about the lives that we live. None on MMIWG, none on human trafficking, none on anything that affects our health or mental state in our communities. Why is that? I'm volunteering my time, Prime Minister, to come teach your staff. No sweat. I bet you'll have an army of people coming to help me out as well. I have another idea, Prime Minister. How about investing in every First Nation community a youth center where we can grasp our youth at an early age to help them live a better life and have a better chance at life. And also provide program and service and dollars for every youth center across this nation. It's what's needed. If you really want to save our people, start with the youth. Thank you very much. Will Allen.
Thank you very, very much. And if you can be very, very brief, I'll go to online Chief James Hobart from BC. Please, briefly, for a proper response from the Prime Minister.
Can you hear me okay?
Okay,
sir, thank you. And Prime Minister, I'm hoping that you'll echo the Minister's words earlier to commit to an independent specific claims resolution center. Canada needs this. It's far too long that we've been looking for a place to house the work we're doing. Please, can you commit to this one thing? Thank you for me.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister, to you.
Thank you. Very, very quickly, because I was glad to get those last voices heard. On documents, we are trying to release absolutely everything. We have scoured, we've gone through, we're pressing partners and religious leaders to release. I know in some questions there are privacy issues, but we're trying to release everything to the Centre for Truth and Reconciliation in Winnipeg so that it can pass along all those things. But I understand how much it is important to know what happened to your loved ones, know what happened to your great aunts and great uncles and those children who were sent to residential schools who never returned. This is something that is a core part of truth before there can be healing, and that is something we are committed to do. We will continue to be there as partners to share absolutely everything we can and to ensure that partners and organizations, whether it's the Catholic Church or everything or anyone else, makes every effort to share and be accountable for the truth of what happened to far too many innocent children in residential schools when they were ripped from their families. And that goes to Chief Wawati's comment. I hear you, Chief. I stand here as the representative of this country that has done so wrong by Indigenous peoples, by First Nations, by Inuit, by Métis, over generations, over centuries. The harm that was done in the breaking of treaties, in the assimilation and negation of culture, of language, of knowledge, the attempts to erase identity, the attempts to marginalize and murder the people who had been stewards of this land for time immemorial, is not just something that is of the past. It is something that characterizes every single day in this country's life. The wrongs of the past echo strongly every day, not just for descendants and Indigenous peoples, but for all Canadians. We bear the responsibility of what has contributed to making modern Canada, and part of that is accepting the truth, the hard and painful truth of evils done to people who welcomed the original settlers, shared their knowledge, their abilities to make it through difficult seasons in this land, extended hands in friendship and agreement and partnership, to be betrayed, attacked, and assimilated. Nothing any one government can do can undo all that. Nothing all the governments of the future, no matter how hard they try, will erase the past. But we can, in a very real way, recognize and accept that past, that is part of this country so many of us love so great today. But that's part of this country too. And recognizing that and committing ourselves every day to undoing the harm that lingers, whether it's cycles of poverty or of intergenerational trauma, mental health and addictions, and cycles of hopelessness because people lost their language, their culture, their identity, their ability to be parents, their ability to cry, their ability to speak their language. Over the past years, I have seen firsthand the extraordinary bravery of survivors of residential schools who, in their 70s, for the very first time for some of them, spoke up to share their truths, to talk about what they had lived through, to demand acknowledgement, accountability, and apologies. And the re-traumatization of telling the stories, the re-traumatization of demanding justice, the re-traumatization of discovery of unmarked graves outside of schools across this country, so-called schools across the country, has been unbelievably painful. And is something that Indigenous, but mostly non-Indigenous Canadians need to hearken to and need to be present to build a better present and a better future. As I've pointed out a few times, even as residential schools were telling Indigenous children that their language had no value, that their culture had no value, that their traditional knowledge was nothing, that they had no value, and all the devastating impacts that had on them and their communities over the following decades. Every other school in Canada was teaching every child in Canada that Indigenous languages had no value, that Indigenous cultures had no value, that Indigenous identity had nothing to offer. So anyone who says that reconciliation is about Indigenous people and the government is missing the largest part of the story. That it is about everyone who lives in this land. That non-Indigenous people have to be part of the healing and the changing of mindsets and the understanding of the trauma and disrespect and pain and evil of the past in order to appreciate and repair the present and the future. And I understand, Chief, your anger, because it comes from a very, very real and justified place. But I am also here with my hand outstretched on behalf of all Canadians, saying, if you want, if you are willing, we are going to try and atone. We are going to try and make sure that the mistakes of the past don't continue for more generations. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not easy. And there's 100 things that I wish we had done, 1,000 things that I wish we'd been able to do in year 1, let alone still struggling to do now in year 8. But we are making steady progress in many places across the country, but there's so much more to do. And I simply say that we will be there. We continue to be there, and we will be there as partners in bringing along provinces that need it, and bringing it up with the territorial government. I hadn't heard the concern about the rates. I will make sure that we follow up on that with the territorial government in the Northwest Territories. We're going to continue to make sure that the people making decisions on your behalf, Chief Daisy, actually understand and know more and start from a place of respect for you. We've made a lot of improvements over the years, but as you say, there's more to do. We have much more to do, including improving the specific claims process, and I know Minister Miller has engaged with that directly. And on the Robinson-Huron Treaty, I can tell you that yes, we are looking very closely at the annuities. Thank you, Chief Sears. I know that is coming along. I am watching closely as those discussions go, because they are large dollar figures. But it's important that we get this right, and it's important that we move forward and show the respect and the healing now that was not done in the past. So always there's going to be lots of work to do, but the ability to come gather with you here, to hear from you directly, the ability also to move forward with that permanent bilateral mechanism, a framework for us to engage on your priorities, follow up on your plans, your steps, your challenges, the things that you want to work on first, foremost, and more. these are the things that we are there to do, and we're going to keep doing it. We're going to stick with you, and we're going to learn from you, and we will continue to move, not as fast as I'd like, certainly not as fast as you'd like, but we're going to make sure we're trying to get it right every step of the way. And I thank you so much for having shared your time with me this afternoon. Miigwech, Chimagwech, Gelakasla, Masicho. Merci beaucoup. Thank you all. Yinaskamitano.
So with that, I'd like to acknowledge and give thanks to the Right Honourable the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. National Chief Roseanne Archibald will be presenting a gift to the Prime Minister, and I believe there is a gift from the Prime Minister to the National Chief.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for being with us here today, for answering the questions and concerns that were raised by our chiefs. You are always welcome at this forum, and we appreciate your time and your ability to face fire with such grace. But we do have a gift. Much of this is food, some of our sacred food, so food for your soul, so to speak. And inside here are baby moccasins. So the little moccasins are to remember our little ones, and these to keep you warm when you travel our various communities. So thank you again for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, National Chief. I also have a little bit of quill work from Christine Toulouse, who is a beautiful artist, and a little tobacco in here for you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. There's also tobacco in your package as well, Prime Minister. So thank you very much. Prayers for you and your family.